Hey there, welcome to Gucciabao. Before we get into today's story, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments. It's always amazing to see how this little storytelling community is growing across the world. Let's connect down there, and I hope you learn from this story. So let's dive in, and you tell me in the comments what you would have done or did do. Title is: I couldn't stop doubting my boyfriend. I checked his texts, questioned his every move, and called it love. He was patient for so long until one day, he packed his things and said, I love you, but I can't prove my innocence forever. Now I'm wondering if I broke the very thing I was afraid to lose. Luca was smiling at his phone. Not laughing, just a small, quiet smile like something landed just right. We were on the couch. I just sat down after doing the dishes. He was leaning back, one ankle resting over the other, his arm along the top of the couch behind me. That's how he always relaxed, like the day was fully behind him and nothing needed fixing. He made being at ease look easy. I glanced over, who's that? He turned the screen slightly toward me. Sophie, from work. I nodded, not slow or suspicious, just a reflex. But inside, something locked up. Not panic, just pressure, small, concentrated. Like when a balloon is tied a little too tightly around your wrist. You can still move, but it's there. He kept typing. I looked back at the TV, but I hadn't been watching it anyway. Something forgettable. Something we picked just to have sound. I wasn't angry, not exactly jealous either. But it was the way he smiled, private, quiet, real. Like she'd said something that meant something. I didn't ask what she said. I could have. It wouldn't have been weird. We were close like that, or at least we used to be. But something about the way he smiled made me want to keep my distance. Like getting too close would break whatever moment he was still in. Sophie had come up before. He mentioned her here and there, helped him build a client deck, stayed late last quarter, brought him cold medicine once when he'd lost his voice. That one had stuck with me more than it should have. He'd brushed it off, said she lived nearby and was going to the pharmacy anyway. No big deal. And maybe it wasn't, but I remember the way he told me. Like it was supposed to sound casual, but he paused first. Pauses meant something to me. I didn't say any of that. I just adjusted the blanket over my legs and picked up my phone, pretending to scroll. I wasn't even pretending for him. He wasn't watching me. I was pretending for myself, like I was fine, like I wasn't building a case in my head. When the episode ended, he asked if I wanted to watch another. I said I was tired. He looked surprised, just for a second, but didn't push. We brushed teeth side by side in silence. He reached for my hand on the way to bed, and I let him take it. We lay down. He turned toward me and kissed my forehead, said goodnight, rolled over. I stared at the ceiling. The feeling wasn't new. That tightening. That flicker of heat behind my ribs. It used to hit me with miles all the time. Only with him, it usually came after I'd already been lied to. Texts I wasn't supposed to see. A girl in his call log listed as Darren. The unmistakable shift when someone starts treating you like an audience instead of a partner. That's what Miles taught me. Trust isn't something you give, it's something you constantly test. Like a fire alarm you press once a week, just to make sure it still works. Luca wasn't like that. He had never given me a reason. He was easy to be with, warm in small ways, brought me coffee just how I liked it, remembered things I said once in passing, stayed calm when I got prickly. He was safe. Which is why the feeling scared me more. I didn't check his phone that night. I thought about it for hours. I watched the screen stay dark beside him. I listened to his breathing slow, and I told myself this is what trust looks like. This is what it means to choose calm. But I wasn't calm. I was running the moment over in my mind like a surveillance tape. The smile. The softness in his eyes. How quickly he said her name. And more than anything, how far away he felt in that split second. Like he had something beautiful in his head that I wasn't part of. That was what stayed with me. The next morning, he got up before me and brought me coffee in bed. Oat milk, 1 sugar, just right. I smiled and said thank you. He kissed the top of my head like he always did. You okay? He asked. Yeah. Just tired. He nodded. Late night. I watched him dress for work. Simple button-down, jeans, the shoes I picked out last fall. He looked like someone I could trust. Like someone who didn't have anything to hide. That almost made it worse. When he left, I got up and made the bed, folded the blanket we'd shared, put his mug in the sink. Then I sat down with my phone and opened Instagram. I typed in her name. It came up fast, mutuals from his work. Sophie, she was pretty, not striking, not intimidating, just put together, confident, like she knew exactly how much attention she got and didn't need to chase anymore. Her profile was mostly work stuff, art gallery photos, a few brunches, nothing obvious. I scrolled back 6 months, then 8. She posted a birthday shout-out to someone I didn't recognize. In the comments, Luca had written, "You're a real one, Soph." I didn't like that. I told myself I was overthinking, but the knot in my chest said otherwise. That night, when Luca came home, I tried to act normal. I asked how his day was, what he ate for lunch, if he'd remembered to book his dental appointment. I laughed when he told me about someone getting locked out of the office. It all felt natural. But under it, I was measuring things, how close he sat, how often he touched me, how long he looked at me when I talked. It felt like trying to hear a whisper in a crowded room. You don't know what's being said, but you're sure you're missing something. I kissed him longer than usual before bed. I think he noticed. His hand stayed at the small of my back a few seconds longer. He pulled me in again. "Everything good?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah, I missed you today." He smiled. "I missed you too." And for a second, I believed it. I let it in. But that night, I still didn't sleep. He gave me his passcode before I asked. We were maybe 5 months in. Long enough to be serious, not long enough to be sure. I was at his place and we'd ordered ramen. He tossed me his phone to check the delivery time. "It's 82.96, he said, without looking up from the TV. I tapped it in, told him it was 15 minutes out, and set the phone on the table like it didn't matter. But the code stuck. Not because I planned to use it. Not at first, but because part of me filed it away like insurance. I told myself it was normal, part of being close. It meant he trusted me, and if I ever needed it, it'd be there. The first time I used it without telling him was maybe a month later. He was in the shower, and his phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from Matt Work. I wasn't expecting to feel anything, just a little curiosity. I picked it up. Tapped in 8296. It was from Matt, just a meme about spreadsheets. I laughed quietly and set it back down, but something lit up in me, a flicker of control. Like I'd just proven to myself that everything was fine, and that I could know things before they hurt me. It wasn't about Luca, not really. It was about not being blindsided again. With Miles, I found out everything too late. All the signs had been there: late nights, weird deflections, excuses that fell apart with a little pressure. But I didn't push. I was chill. I trusted him, until I couldn't anymore. So with Luca, I didn't want to wait for the feeling. I wanted to be ahead of it. The second time, I told myself I had a reason. He'd left his phone on the counter while he went to grab takeout. I was bored. I remembered Sophie had commented on a story of his the day before. Just a laugh emoji, but I'd seen it. I told myself I was just curious if they talked often. He had a folder of messages, normal stuff. Group chats, work threads, fantasy football trash talk. I found hers, scrolled up. They didn't talk much. Her last message was a photo of a whiteboard from a meeting. "Saved your ass, you're welcome." Luca had replied, "You're a saint, seriously." My stomach turned, not because it was flirty, it wasn't, but it was. Warm, comfortable. Familiar. I put the phone down and didn't say anything when he came back with the food. That was the beginning of it. The in-between space where I wasn't accusing him of anything, but I wasn't not looking either. It wasn't that I thought he was cheating. It was that I didn't believe anyone was completely safe. People always have layers, you just have to dig. Eventually, I stopped needing a reason to check. If he was in the shower or cooking or running to the store, I'd glance. Nothing deep, just a scroll through his recent texts, his DMs, maybe his search history. He never hid anything. That made it feel like I wasn't crossing a line. But I just didn't want to admit it. The lie I told myself was that I was protecting us. That trust was something you maintained, like oil in a car. You didn't wait until it broke down, you checked it. Regularly. Quietly. Just to be sure, if Luca noticed, he never said. He didn't change his password. Didn't get defensive. Didn't start guarding his phone like Miles had. That made me think I was being smart. careful, preemptive. But over time, it became a reflex. If I was alone and his phone was there, I'd check. Even if we just had a perfect night. Even if he just told me he loved me with that softness in his voice he only used when he meant it. Even if everything was good. Especially then. Because that's when I got scared. When things felt too easy, too good, too vulnerable, I never looked for proof he was lying. I looked for signs he could be. That's the part people don't get. It wasn't about catching him. It was about preparing myself. I didn't want the crash, I wanted to brace before it hit. One night, we were watching a movie and he fell asleep halfway through. His head tilted toward me, his breathing deep and even. I glanced at his phone. It was unlocked. I checked his messages. Nothing, checked his photos. Just screenshots of work slides, a dumb meme, a picture of the pizza we'd made last week. Checked his search history. Whether Spotify, airline prices, that one stopped me. Why airline prices? I clicked the link. It was a search for a weekend trip to Colorado. I stared at it for a long time. There was no message attached. No booking. Just a search. I felt my heart beat harder, not because I thought it was shady, but because I had no idea whether it was for me or not. He hadn't mentioned a trip. I sat there with his phone in my hand, the light washing over my face in the dark. I looked down at him, his mouth slightly open, that same loose sleep posture he always had when he felt safe. And I felt sick. Not because I found anything, but because I kept looking. I put the phone down and went to the bathroom, shut the door, sat on the edge of the tub and stared at the floor. I told myself I wasn't like this, that I wasn't controlling, that I wasn't insecure, that this was about information, not fear. But if that were true, I wouldn't be shaking. I stared at my reflection in the mirror and didn't recognize the look in my eyes. It wasn't strength. It was panic dressed up as logic. I didn't bring it up the next day, didn't ask about the trip. He mentioned wanting to take some time off soon, said he was thinking of going somewhere with me. Somewhere quiet, maybe mountains. You'd like that? I nodded, smiled, kissed him, and hated myself a little. Because the thing I wanted, to be close, to be trusted, to feel safe, was the thing I kept pushing away every time I reached for his phone. Sophie came up again on a Thursday. We were sitting on the balcony. I had a glass of wine, he had a beer. It was that rare kind of evening where the weather doesn't ask anything of you. No jacket, no sweat, just stillness. He was talking about a presentation he'd finally wrapped. Sophie pulled the last couple slides together. I was wiped. I nodded, took a sip, said nothing. He didn't notice. Or maybe he did but didn't want to break the moment. We sat there a while longer, talking about nothing. He leaned over and kissed the side of my head before going inside to take a call. I stayed outside, watching the sky go from soft blue to dark. I didn't ask any follow-up questions. Didn't ask what the slides were or why Sophie, specifically, helped. I'd learned that questions made me look a certain way, and I hated that look. The tilted head, the raised brow, the slightly too casual tone, so I didn't ask. I just sat there, nodding and storing it, like a squirrel burying something it would dig up later. When he fell asleep that night, I opened her Instagram again. She'd posted a boomerang of a takeout box on a desk. The caption said, "Crunch time, pitch mode, send help." I squinted at the desk, tried to see if it was his. It wasn't, I think. There was a mug in the background I didn't recognize. But I couldn't stop looking at it, zooming in, backing out, reading the comments. Luca liked the post. That one hit harder than I expected, just a double tap, just a little red heart. But it made me feel like she was in his world in a way I wasn't. Not in a romantic way, in a daily way, the kind of person who's just there. Always, effortlessly. I clicked into her tagged photos, nothing personal. A lot of work events. She seemed liked, respected, normal, the kind of woman you'd want in your corner or across from you at a happy hour, or maybe both. I wasn't looking for anything concrete. I didn't expect to find some smoking gun. What I wanted, and this was the part I couldn't say out loud, was to find a reason to feel how I already felt. Because the way I was feeling didn't come with evidence. It came with impressions, flashes, that smile on the couch, the way he said her name, the way she replied fast in the comments, the way she seemed so available. That was what made her dangerous. Not that she was obvious, but that she was plausible. I never told Luca any of this. He didn't even know I'd seen her Instagram, or that I checked it once a week. Sometimes more. Not obsessively, just habitually. Like the way you check the weather even though you're not going anywhere. It wasn't that I thought she liked him, or that he liked her. I just didn't trust how easy it would be if he did. The next morning, he asked if I wanted to go on a day trip that weekend, somewhere with water. Just to get out of the city, I said yes. Smiled like I meant it, kissed him back when he pulled me close in the kitchen. But even then, I was thinking about the Instagram post, wondering if she worked late that night, wondering if he stayed with her, wondering why that bothered me more than it should have. Later that week, I met Harper for coffee. I didn't bring up Sophie. I mentioned work stress, bad sleep, my landlord being slow to fix the heater. All the safe things. But somewhere in the middle of stirring her drink, Harper looked up and said, "You seem tight lately." Tight. Like you're always bracing for something. I shrugged, aren't we all? She watched me for a second, then let it go. That night, Luca told me he might have to work a little late. Sophie's got the mock-ups and I want to go over them before tomorrow. I said okay, I didn't mean it. When he got home, I checked his phone again. Messages looked normal. A photo of a whiteboard sketch. A few quick texts. No emojis, no hearts, no weird timing. Still, I scrolled further, looking for what I wasn't sure. A slip, a sign, something that would let me say, see. This wasn't all in my head, but it was in my head. That was the problem. I wanted something external to match what I was already feeling. I wanted my fear to be justified. It wasn't, I knew it. And still I looked. It was a joke. That's how it started. We were driving back from the grocery store. I was scrolling through the playlist, trying to find something neither of us would skip. The sun was starting to drop. That washed out part of the afternoon where everything feels a little numb. We hit a red light. He looked at his phone in the cup holder and laughed. "What?" I asked. He tilted it toward me. "Nothing. Just the guys blowing up the group chat." I glanced at the screen, a mess of memes and half-finished sentences. I caught one from Matt that said, "Tell your girlfriend to stop tracking you like a damn UPS package." Luca laughed again. "You've got a reputation, babe." I didn't laugh, just raised my eyebrows. "Oh, come on," he said, "it's funny." I kept scrolling the playlist. "You said that like it's true." He reached over and touched my knee. "They just like to mess with me. You're not actually that bad." I didn't respond. We rode the rest of the way in a silence that wasn't a fight, just thin, brittle. Like if either of us pressed too hard, it would crack. He carried the groceries in. I followed. The tension hung around, soft but obvious, not loud enough to name, just enough to make everything feel off. After dinner, he went to the bedroom to take a call with his brother. I stayed on the couch. Picked up my phone, opened the location-sharing app. Just habit at this point. Still at home, still me, still nothing. I watched the little dot sit there, didn't move, didn't lie, and I hated how much that calmed me. I told myself it wasn't about control. I just liked knowing. That's how I framed it. I was a worst-case scenario person. The kind who scanned rooms automatically for exits, who made backup plans for backup plans. It wasn't about him, it was about me, my wiring. But deep down, I knew that was only half true. The other half was that I didn't trust the silence, the gaps, the parts of his life that didn't include me. I needed to feel like I was close to every corner, even the ones he didn't think twice about. When he came out, he looked at me for a second longer than usual. Like he could tell something had shifted but wasn't sure how to name it. "You okay?" "Yeah." He nodded, "You sure?" I turned off the TV, just tired. That was my shield, tired, always tired. He went to bed first. I stayed on the couch, staring at nothing. The joke replayed in my head. Tracking you like a UPS package. Was it funny, objectively maybe, if I were someone else? But it reminded me that they noticed. That it wasn't just between us anymore. That somewhere along the line, I stopped being private and started being predictable. Of course I check his location. Of course I hover. Of course I'm the girl who needs to know where he is, who he's with, what time he left, what time he'll be back. I opened our message thread, scrolled up, looked at how many times I'd asked, "Almost home? Still at work? Who all's going?" It didn't seem like much in the moment. Just small questions, casual ones, but stacked together, they read like surveillance. The next morning, he kissed me goodbye and said he might be home a little late. I smiled and said okay. As soon as the door clicked shut, I opened the app, still at home, then slowly moving. I watched the dot move down the street. I told myself I wasn't checking it again later. That today, I wouldn't let it get to me. But around 4 p.m., I checked again, and again at 5:30, and again at 7 o'clock. He was still at the office, just like he said, and I still didn't feel better. I just felt worse because I'd promised myself I wouldn't need to know. And still, I needed to know. That night, I didn't bring it up. We ate dinner, watched a movie, went to bed. He touched my back softly as I turned away to sleep. I let him, but I couldn't stop thinking about that moment in the car. The look on his face when he realized I didn't think it was funny. The quick correction, "You're not actually that bad." Not that bad. The kind of sentence that's supposed to reassure, but only works if it isn't true. I told Harper everything except the parts that made me look bad. We were at her place, sitting on the floor with takeout between us. She just opened a second beer and was mixing it with orange juice. She called it a lazy shandy. I called it questionable. She smiled and drank it anyway. I told her about Luca, not all of it, just the surface. How things felt a little different lately, how he'd been quiet, how I sometimes didn't know where we stood. She tilted her head. Different how? I shrugged, I don't know, distant maybe. Harper looked at me, then at the food. She never rushed me, that's what I liked about her, she could hold silence without needing to fill it. Most people can't. She asked, "You think he's pulling away?" I nodded slowly. Maybe, or maybe I'm just being paranoid. She waited. I poked at the container of noodles. "There's this girl at work, Sophie, he brings her up sometimes, says they're on the same team, I don't know, it's probably nothing." Harper didn't react right away. Just said, "And how do you feel when he brings her up?" Off, I exhaled. It's not that he's doing anything wrong, it's just, he gets this look sometimes, like he's somewhere else. And it always starts when she comes up. Harper nodded. "Have you said that to him?" Kind of, not directly, I paused. I mean, I've asked questions, tried to feel it out, but he just says they're friends. "Do you believe him?" I didn't answer, not right away. She leaned back, rested the bottle against her knee. "Okay, let me ask something else. Are you afraid he's cheating, or are you afraid he'll leave?" The question hit me like a switch being flipped in a dark room. I opened my mouth. Closed it. "That's what it sounds like," she said gently. "You're not acting like someone who thinks they're being betrayed. You're acting like someone who thinks they're being replaced." I sat there, holding a fork full of food I wasn't going to eat. The weight of what she said sat heavy in my throat. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, but I couldn't. She wasn't accusing me. There was no judgment in her voice, just recognition. Like someone who had been there before and finally figured out their own part in the pattern. I put the food down. "I don't know how to stop it." "Stop what?" The voice in my head that keeps asking what's missing. She nodded again, slowly. "It's probably not about him." I swallowed. It's always been like this. Even before Luca, I thought it would be different with someone who didn't lie to me. Harper took another sip of her drink. Trust doesn't start when someone else earns it. It starts when you stop needing it to be proven over and over. I didn't say anything. Just sat there, staring at a spot on the rug. Her words landed like something I already knew but hadn't wanted to face. "Do you think he knows how much you worry?" she asked. "I don't know, maybe." "Do you want him to?" "No," I paused. "Yes. But only if he could understand it, without being hurt by it." "That's not how it works," she said, gently but directly. "You don't get to hand someone a bag of glass and ask them not to bleed." I laughed. It wasn't a funny laugh. More like a release valve. Jesus. She reached for my hand. "You're not crazy, but you're scared, and scared people do weird things." I nodded. I've looked through his phone. "How often?" "Not every day, just enough." She didn't flinch. Didn't scold me, just asked, "What are you hoping to find?" I didn't answer, because the truth was I wasn't hoping to find anything. I was hoping to not find something. And hoping for that, over and over again, is its own kind of torture. Harper squeezed my hand. "If you need him to fail just to feel safe, you're going to break both of you." I sat with that for a long time. Later, when I got home, Luca was asleep on the couch. TV still playing. His mouth slightly open. He looked peaceful. He looked like someone who hadn't just been dissected in a 2-hour therapy session he didn't know he was part of. I sat down beside him, watched his chest rise and fall. I didn't open his phone that night, but I did stare at it longer than I needed to. It started small. He began turning off his notifications. At first, I didn't notice. It wasn't like he made a show of it. But over time, I realized his phone didn't light up as much. The soft pings I used to hear, Slack messages, random texts from his brother, ESPN alerts, they just weren't there anymore. One night we were brushing our teeth side by side. He set his phone down on the counter, screen dark. I glanced at it. No previews, no badges. "You change your settings?" I asked, casually, spitting toothpaste into the sink. He wiped his mouth with a towel. "Yeah, work's been chaotic, easier to focus without all the buzzing." I nodded like it made sense, and it did. It made perfect sense, but I still felt it, the shift. It wasn't about the phone. It was about what the silence implied. Because I realized I had started to rely on those little things. Those previews, the evidence of a normal life, seeing a message pop up and knowing it wasn't a secret, that it was right there, unhidden. And now it wasn't. That night when he went to shower, I picked up his phone like I always did. Habit, not intention. The lock screen stared back at me. No previews, just the time I unlocked it. It was fine. Everything was fine. No strange texts. No new DMs. Sophie had sent a message earlier in the day, "Final versions in the drive. Let me know if anything looks off." He'd replied, "Looks great, appreciate you." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Appreciate you? 3 words that shouldn't matter. But they did, because they were easy, thoughtful, familiar. I set the phone down, tried to breathe. The next day, I opened our shared location app while I was waiting in line for coffee. I told myself I wasn't going to, but I did anyway. The little blue dot hovered at his office. Still there, I closed the app, didn't feel better. That night, he asked what I wanted for dinner. I said I wasn't hungry. He offered to order something anyway. I shook my head, sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor. He sat next to me. "You okay?" "Yeah. You've been quiet." "I'm tired." He nodded, didn't push. That was the thing about Luca. He gave space, which sounds good until space becomes the last thing you want. A week later, he updated his lock screen. A different wallpaper, that's all, but it made my stomach clench. I caught myself wondering if it was because of me. If I was pushing too hard, watching too much. If he felt it, the weight of being observed. Because that's what I was doing, even if I didn't say it out loud. I was tracking the changes, noticing every adjustment, every locked notification, every shortcut taken instead of a full explanation. The following Sunday, we were doing laundry, folding clothes on the couch. I held up one of his shirts. "You haven't worn this in a while." He shrugged. "Out of rotation, I guess. You used to wear it all the time." "Yeah," he said, "things change." The way he said it wasn't pointed, but I felt it. Later that night, I opened his laptop. Another habit. He rarely closed anything, just left tabs open like breadcrumbs. I scanned the history, mostly work stuff. A couple YouTube videos, one link to a skincare article. I paused at that one. Something about under eye circles. I closed the laptop. In the bathroom mirror, I looked at my own face. I didn't like what I saw, not because of the dark circles or the tight mouth, but because I couldn't remember the last time I looked and didn't feel like I was searching for something wrong. Luca came in behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "Hey," he said, his voice soft. "You good?" I nodded. He kissed my neck. "You sure?" I looked at him in the mirror. "I don't know." There was a pause. "I feel like you don't trust me lately," he said. I held my breath. "I'm not doing anything wrong," he added. "You know that, right?" I didn't answer, because what could I say? That I knew logically he was clean. That I'd checked everything and found nothing. That my doubt wasn't about him, but about how hard it was to believe anything good could just stay good. Instead, I said, "I'm trying." He nodded, kissed my temple, held me for another minute. I wished I could explain what it felt like to be stuck between knowing he deserved trust and not knowing how to give it. I wished I could explain that when someone turns off their notifications, all it does is turn on mine. It was harmless. That's what I kept telling myself. I'd seen the message by accident, if there is such a thing. Luca had left his phone on the nightstand while he was making breakfast. I wasn't snooping, not that time. I was setting down a glass of water, and the screen lit up just as I placed it beside his. A notification from Sophie. "Lol, you're the best." That was it, one line, casual, energetic, friendly. But my stomach dropped anyway. I stared at it, not because of what it said, but because I didn't know what came before it. That was the part that killed me, not knowing the context. Not knowing if he'd done something for her, said something, fixed something, made her laugh, made her feel seen, and not knowing if that made her feel close. When he came in, holding 2 mugs of coffee, I tried to act normal. "Thanks," I said, taking one. My voice came out tight. He looked at me. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, fine." He sat down on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, opened it, scrolled a bit, smiled softly at something. I couldn't tell if it was her message or something else. I stared at the sheet, at the stitching, at my fingers twisted in the corner seam. "Who was that?" I asked. He looked up. "Just now, your phone." "Oh, Sophie, just following up about some client stuff." I nodded. There was a pause. "You okay?" he asked again. "Yeah." But I wasn't, not because I thought anything had happened, but because I couldn't stop the wave. The instinct. The way a tiny line of text pulled something sharp through my chest. It wasn't the message. It was how it made me feel, like I was suddenly outside of something I didn't know existed until just now. I waited until he went into the shower. Then I picked up his phone and scrolled back. She'd sent him a message late the night before. A small joke about a typo in a client brief. He'd replied with a laughing emoji and something like, "You always catch the stuff I miss." Then came hers. "Lol, you're the best." Harmless, so harmless it hurt more, because it made sense. Because it didn't cross a line, because it wasn't even flirtation, it was rapport. Natural, effortless. A rhythm they clearly had. I put the phone down and went into the kitchen, poured water, tried to breathe through it. When he came out of the shower, he was smiling. "You want to go for a walk later?" he asked. "Maybe." He looked at me for a second, the smile fading slightly. "What's going on?" "Nothing." "Come on." I hesitated, then asked, "Do you think she has feelings for you?" "Sophie." "Yeah." He laughed. "No. Not even close. You guys talk a lot. We work together. She texts you at night. She texts everyone at night. It's when she gets her second wind." He smiled like that was some quirky detail I should find charming. I didn't. "And what about you?" I asked. "What about me? Do you ever feel anything?" He blinked, not defensive, just tired. "No, she's a friend, a coworker, that's all." I looked at him, searched his face for something, hesitation, deflection, even offense. But he was calm, steady. "Okay," I said, "I believe you." But I didn't feel any better, because it wasn't about believing him. It was about not believing myself. After he left for work, I sat on the couch and opened my laptop. I stared at a blank document, tried to get some work done, and failed completely. My mind kept circling that message. "You're the best." I'd said that to him 1,000 times. So had she. So what was the difference? The difference was, I said it from inside our life. She said it from the edge of his workday, looking in. And lately, I couldn't shake the feeling that she saw a version of him that was lighter, unburdened, less observed. I kept thinking, what if he liked that version better? Not because she was better, but because I'd made things heavy. What if kindness from her felt easier than trust from me? That night, we didn't talk about it again. We watched TV, ordered Thai. He touched my leg under the blanket and smiled at me during a funny scene. I smiled back. But something between us had shifted. Not broken, just bruised, and bruises fade slowly when you keep pressing on them. It came out of nowhere. We were eating dinner, leftovers, I think, something simple. He was talking about his brother's new apartment, how the lease was overpriced but the view was good. I was only half listening, not because I didn't care, but because I was watching his face, his hands, the way he talked when he wasn't thinking about being watched. Somewhere between his second bite and his next sentence, I asked it. "Do you love me like you did before?" He looked up, fork halfway to his mouth. "What?" "I mean it," I said carefully. "Do you love me the same way you used to?" He set the fork down, not in a dramatic way, just slow, measured. "Yeah," he said, "of course." But it came a second too late. Not long enough to be suspicious, just long enough to notice. And once I noticed it, I couldn't unhear it. He saw something shift in my face and reached across the table. Hey, I do. I promise. Okay. I don't know why you'd ask that. I shrugged. People change, feelings change. He nodded slowly. Sure, but not mine. Not the answer I wanted. I don't even know what I wanted. Maybe something more emphatic. More certain, something that would quiet the buzzing in my head. But that was the thing about Luca, he never oversold. He was solid, calm, reliable, and most days that grounded me. But tonight it made me restless. He asked, "Where's this coming from?" "I don't know," I said. "I guess I just don't feel it the same way lately." His face tightened, not angry, just concerned. "Feel what?" "Your love, I know it's there. I don't feel it." He leaned back in the chair, exhaled, ran a hand through his hair. That was his tell when he felt cornered but didn't want to escalate. "I think I'm doing everything I can to show you." "I know. So what's missing?" I didn't have an answer. I wanted to say something about warmth, spontaneity, that feeling you get when someone looks at you like you're still new, still wanted. But the truth was, he did look at me like that, sometimes. I just didn't believe it when he did. "Maybe it's me," I said. He gave a half smile, the kind you make when you're trying to be patient but you're also tired. "I don't want to fight. I'm not trying to." He nodded, picked up his fork again, ate a few more bites. Then he said, "You know, it's hard to keep proving the same thing over and over." I didn't say anything. He looked at me, his voice even. "I love you, but sometimes it feels like you're only ever measuring that, not receiving it." That stung. Because it was true, I didn't know how to receive it anymore. I'd spent so long watching, scanning, testing. His love had become something I audited. Later that night, I sat on the edge of the bed while he changed into pajamas. He pulled his shirt over his head, tossed it into the hamper, then turned to face me. "I don't know what you need from me," he said. "I'm not holding back. I'm not lying to you." I nodded. "But if you keep asking for proof I already gave, we're going to burn out." I nodded again. He climbed into bed and pulled the covers up. I turned off the light and slid in next to him. He reached for my hand under the blanket. I let him hold it, but I stared at the ceiling for hours after he fell asleep. Not because he said anything cruel, but because he didn't. He'd told the truth, quietly and clearly, and I realized I was the only one still fighting. I didn't mean to write it. I opened the Notes app on my phone just to jot something down, a grocery reminder, I think, but my fingers didn't stop. They started typing something else. It began with, "I don't know how to stop feeling like you're slipping away." And then it just poured out. A long, disorganized string of thoughts, some angry, some scared, some petty, some honest. A confession that read like an argument with no voice on the other side. I didn't edit as I went. I didn't think. I just let it come. "You used to text me during the day just to say hi. Now it's always something functional. Something about plans or logistics. I hate how much Sophie is in my head. I know it's irrational, but I can't turn it off. I compare myself to her. I imagine conversations you're not even having. I feel like you're still here, but not really with me. And I don't know if that's because you've changed or because I won't let myself believe you haven't. It wasn't fair. Not all of it. Some of it painted him in a light that wasn't real. I twisted harmless moments into warnings, interpreted his quietness as withdrawal, projected every doubt I had about myself onto him, but at least it was honest. I reread it once, all 3 pages of it. And then I didn't send it. I hovered over the share button. I even copied it into a message draft with his name at the top. But something stopped me, not fear, not pride. Just this heavy sense that if I sent it, I wouldn't be giving him insight, I'd be giving him a burden. Another thing to carry, another thing to answer for, another test to pass. And I wasn't sure I could handle his reaction, or worse, his calm. Because Luca didn't explode, he didn't yell, he listened, always. But sometimes listening without reacting is its own kind of boundary. And I was terrified I'd hit that wall, so I left the note in drafts. Didn't delete it, didn't send it. Just let it sit there, waiting for a version of me that might be brave enough to let him see all of it. That night, he was lying on the couch, watching something light. I sat down next to him. He smiled and opened his arm for me to curl into him. I did, and for a while we were still. He laughed at something on the screen, kissed the top of my head, held me like nothing was wrong, and I just kept thinking about the draft. About the way I'd written, "I miss you even when you're holding me." About how he would have read that. About how, if he'd written it to me, I would have felt gutted. Because it's one thing to be unsure. It's another thing to tell someone they're not enough, even when they're doing everything they can to be. Later, in bed, he fell asleep quickly. I lay there with my phone under the pillow, the unsent message still open. I read it one more time, top to bottom. No edits, no embellishments, just raw. I didn't cry, I didn't spiral. I just sat with it. The quiet truth of how hard it is to feel unloved by someone who's trying their best to love you. He told me he was going out of town on a Wednesday night over dinner. Nothing heavy, no big announcement, just, "I think I'm gonna go visit Nathan next weekend. Haven't seen him in a while." Nathan was his brother, lived in Denver. They were close but not constant. A visit was normal, except it didn't feel normal to me. I said, "Oh, okay." He looked at me carefully. "You seem surprised." "I am a little. I just decided yesterday, work's been a lot. I want a break, some space." That last word echoed. Space. He didn't say it harshly, but it landed like a quiet boundary being drawn mid-sentence. I nodded and forced a small smile. "You already booked the flight?" "Not yet. Was gonna do it tonight." He kept eating, like we were talking about weekend errands. I pushed food around on my plate. I didn't ask if he wanted to go alone. He'd already answered that by not asking me to come. That night, while he brushed his teeth, I stared at the back of his head in the mirror. Wondered if he was pulling away or just finally taking a step back from the pressure I'd wrapped him in. After he went to bed, I stayed up and opened his travel email folder. I told myself I was just curious, just checking. The Denver flight was there, one search. No booking yet, that should have calmed me. It didn't. The next morning I asked, "Why now?" He didn't pretend to misunderstand. "I need to clear my head." "About us?" "No," he said too quickly. Then, "Not exactly." That answer stuck with me all day. He booked the flight later that night. Left his laptop open on the kitchen table when he did it, like he wanted me to see. Like he was saying, "I'm not hiding anything. I'm just going." And that was the part I couldn't make peace with. The fact that he didn't owe me an explanation, because he hadn't done anything wrong. He told me his return flight was Sunday night. Sent me the itinerary, told me where he'd be staying. And still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had already left. The day before the trip, he was packing a small carry-on, t-shirts, a book, running shoes. I sat on the bed watching. "You're really going?" I said, like I was just catching up to it. He looked over at me. "Yeah. You're sure you want to be alone?" He zipped the bag halfway, then sat beside me. "I think I need to be." I didn't respond. "I don't want you to take it personally. But it feels personal." He nodded. "I get that." There was a long silence. He reached for my hand, held it gently. "I love you," he said. "But lately, everything I do feels like it's being interpreted." I didn't argue, because he was right. "I'm not trying to push you away," he added. "I just need to be somewhere where I'm not constantly proving I belong." It hurt, but I understood. That night, I tried to be close. I curled into him while we watched TV, touched his arm, played with the hem of his sleeve. He kissed me softly before bed. I held onto him tighter than usual. He didn't pull away. But when morning came, he packed up and left with a calm I didn't know how to hold. I stood at the window and watched his car pull out of the driveway. He didn't look back, and I kept telling myself, it's just a weekend, not the end. But something about the stillness after the door closed told me I'd feel different when he came back. He got back Sunday night, just like he said he would. I heard the key turn in the door, the soft click, his usual shuffle in the entryway. He didn't call out right away, just moved around like someone who lived there, like someone who didn't need to announce his presence because it was supposed to be normal. I stayed on the couch. He walked in with his bag slung over one shoulder. He looked rested, tired but in a peaceful way. "Hey," he said, voice low. "Hey." He dropped the bag by the door, came over, kissed the top of my head. I didn't lean into it. He sat down on the other end of the couch, left some space between us. Not a wall, just a gap. Like he didn't want to assume. I asked how the trip was. He said it was good. Easy. He and Nathan just hung out, played cards, hiked a little. talked about dumb stuff. He said it felt nice to not explain himself for a few days. I smiled small. I'm glad. He asked how my weekend was. I told him it was quiet. I didn't tell him I barely slept, that I kept checking his location, that I stared at his Instagram even though he didn't post anything, that I opened our last text thread 20 times and kept rereading the same 3 lines. I didn't tell him I searched his brother's tagged photos looking for a clue that I wasn't being lied to, even though I wasn't. I just said it was fine. He nodded, got up to take a shower. When he came back, he dropped his toiletry bag onto the bed and unzipped it. I waited a few minutes, then followed him into the bedroom and sat on the edge. While he brushed his hair, I opened the bag. There was nothing in it but the usual toothpaste, floss, deodorant, a receipt from the airport snack counter. I checked his phone next. While he was in the kitchen, photos, texts, nothing. I felt sick. Not because I found something. Because I didn't, and I still wasn't relieved. I was ashamed. Of the fact that I couldn't stop. That I needed to check to feel close again. That trust, for me, had become a scavenger hunt I never wanted to finish. When he came back into the room, I was sitting on the bed, staring at my hands. He leaned in the doorway, said nothing. Finally, he asked, "Did you look?" I didn't respond. "I'm not mad," he said. "I just want to know." I nodded. He sat beside me. "I wish I could make you feel safe," he said, not unkindly. "But I don't know what else to do." I looked at him, really looked. And for the first time I saw it, not frustration, not anger, not defensiveness. Just sadness, like he was tired of being held at a distance by someone who was standing right in front of him. I whispered, "I don't know why I do this." He didn't try to solve it, he just nodded, quietly. We went to sleep that night without touching, not in a cold way, just like we'd both agreed not to force something that wasn't ready. And for the first time, I didn't cry. I just lay there, eyes open, listening to the sound of him breathing. Still here, still him, and still I felt like I was losing him. It was late, almost midnight. The kind of quiet where even the fridge sounded too loud. We'd gone most of the evening in soft conversation. Nothing heavy, nothing sharp. Just the rhythm we'd always been good at when we weren't sidestepping the things that mattered. I don't remember what finally pushed me to say it. Maybe it was the way he didn't look up from his book. Or maybe it was just that the silence between us wasn't comfortable anymore, it was padded avoidance. I looked at him and asked, "Would you tell me if you didn't love me anymore?" He didn't look up right away. When he did, he closed the book slowly, laid it on the coffee table, and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Yeah," he said. His voice was calm, not reassuring, just real. I waited. He looked at me, tired but not unkind. "Yeah, I'd tell you." I didn't say anything. Then he added, "And you still wouldn't believe me." That landed hard, not because it was cruel, it wasn't, but because it was the clearest thing he'd ever said to me. I sat back, stung. He kept looking at me steady, not angry, just stripped down. "That's how it feels," he said. "Like there's no version of me that gets to be enough." My throat tightened. I opened my mouth, closed it. "I tell you I love you, you doubt it. I show you, you question it. I give you access, and it just becomes another thing you use to measure whether I'm about to disappear." I swallowed hard. "I don't mean to." "I know you don't," he cut in gently. "But it still costs something." I looked away. "I've been trying." He nodded. "I can see that, but trying's different from trusting." That one hit deeper. I wanted to argue, to explain. To say that it wasn't about him, it was about me, about the damage before him, the things I never fully named. But I knew how that would sound. Like a deflection. Like I was asking him to fix what he didn't break. So I just said, "I'm scared." "I know. And I don't want to lose you." His eyes softened. "But you don't want to let me stay either, not really." That silence stretched long. He leaned back into the couch. "I've never loved anyone the way I love you." That made my heart twist. But I also feel like I've spent the last year trying to convince you I'm not someone else. That's what broke me, because he wasn't wrong. I had made him carry the shadow of people he wasn't. I'd been so scared of being hurt again that I built a relationship designed to catch betrayal instead of nurture love. I looked at him. His face was calm, but he looked older somehow. Not in age, just in wear, like someone who had kept carrying something heavier than he signed up for. "I don't know how to undo it," I whispered. I'm not asking you to undo anything, he said. I'm just telling you I can't keep living inside a test. There it was, not an accusation, not a threat, just a limit. And I knew in that moment that something had changed between us. Not loud, not final, but real. The kind of shift you don't always feel until you look back and realize that was the night everything turned. We didn't fight. Not in the way people usually mean. No raised voices. No slammed doors. No dramatic ultimatums. It was just a conversation. But it was the kind that ended something, even if neither of us said the words. It started when he came into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. He looked down at the floor for a while before speaking. His voice was quiet, steady, that tone he used when he was done avoiding something. I've been thinking a lot, he said. I didn't move. Okay. I don't want to hurt you, he said. I really don't. I nodded, I know. He glanced at me. But I think I am, just by being here. That sat heavy in the room. I waited for him to walk it back. He didn't. He continued slowly. It's like, no matter how much I show up, it's never enough to cancel out whatever fear you're living with. That's not your fault, I said. I know, he said, but it's still the reality. He looked at me and I could feel how tired he was, not just in his face, but in his posture. His whole body looked like it had been carrying too much for too long. I love you, he said, but I feel like I'm dating your past. That landed hard. I knew exactly what he meant. I never wanted to bring that into this, I said quietly. He nodded. But it came with you, and I get that, I really do. But I don't know how to love you and compete with ghosts at the same time. We sat in silence, not uncomfortable, just full. I think you're still waiting for me to mess up, he said. Like it's not if I'll fail you, it's when. I don't want that to be true, I whispered. But it is. He wasn't accusing me, he was just naming it. Naming the thing I'd felt but never said out loud. He shifted on the bed. Every day feels like a quiet test. Did I answer fast enough? Did I say the right thing? Should I have mentioned Sophie or kept it to myself? Should I have smiled less, said more, touched you sooner, pulled away later? I swallowed hard. I don't want to be scared in my own relationship, he said. But I am. I'm scared that everything I do is being interpreted through some lens I can't control. I looked at him. I don't want you to feel that way. I know, he said again, and he did. That was the worst part. He knew I loved him. He just couldn't survive the way I loved him. I don't think this is what either of us wants, he said. It wasn't a breakup line, it wasn't some cliché, it was just true. He reached over and touched my knee. You're not crazy, he said, and I'm not the bad guy. Tears welled up before I could stop them. Not dramatic, just there. I know, I whispered. I'm just tired. I know. I don't want to keep being the person you have to constantly decode. I nodded. He didn't say anything else for a while. Just sat there with his hand still on my leg, like he wanted to remember what we looked like before this. Eventually, he got up, walked into the other room, left the door open. I sat there for a long time, feeling what it means to love someone and still push them away, not because you stopped wanting them, but because you never really believed you could keep them. There was no yelling, no betrayal, no big moment. Just grief, and it was mine. He didn't leave in anger. He packed like someone who didn't want to make it worse. No slamming drawers, no trash bags full of clothes. Just quiet movements, folding, stacking, pausing between items like he was deciding what mattered enough to bring and what didn't. I stood in the doorway, not in his way, just there. Do you want me to leave while you do this? I asked. He shook his head. No, you don't have to. He kept packing, one drawer at a time. I watched him take the hoodie I always wore when I was cold. The mug I bought him that said Loki tired, Heike trying, his books, his sneakers, a charger from the wall, nothing dramatic. But every item felt like a small closing door. He didn't rush. At one point, he looked up and said, "This isn't punishment, you know that, right?" I nodded, couldn't speak. I just don't have it in me to keep convincing you. I sat on the bed, hands in my lap, watching my relationship collapse gently. Not in fire, not in rage, but in clarity. He zipped his suitcase and paused before lifting it. I didn't want it to be like this, I said finally. I know. I thought love would be enough. His voice was soft. It should have been. He came over and sat next to me. I never felt unloved by you, he said, but I felt constantly measured. And eventually, that starts to feel like being distrusted, even when you're doing everything right. My throat burned. I wanted to tell him he was doing everything right, that I knew it, that I'd known it for a long time, but still couldn't stop myself from waiting for the other shoe to drop. He looked at me, eyes gentle but tired. "You didn't break me," he said, "but this is breaking me." That was the line, the one that split us. He stood up, grabbed the suitcase handle, took one last look around the room. I didn't ask where he was going. I already knew he wouldn't be far, just not here, not with me. When he walked to the door, I followed. He put his hand on the knob, then turned back and looked at me like he wanted to freeze this version of me in his mind. Not the paranoid one, not the one who needed proof. Just me standing there wanting him to stay. He said, "I still love you." I nodded, my voice gone. "But I can't keep loving you like this, not when it costs me peace." And then he opened the door, walked through it, closed it behind him without a sound. I stood there for a long time, not because I thought he might come back, but because I needed to hear the silence that followed to understand what I'd done. The absence was loud, not in noise, but in shape. In all the space he used to take up, the coffee table stayed cleaner. The couch had more room. The bathroom counter was suddenly organized, like it had never known what it meant to share. But the silence wasn't peaceful. It was alert, a kind of hum beneath everything. I still checked his location the first few days. Not because I didn't know where he told me before he left, in that calm, steady way he said everything, but because stopping felt like surrender. The app still showed that familiar dot, still labeled Luca, still moving through the city like nothing had changed. Grocery store, his brother's place, back home again, wherever home was now. But eventually I stopped opening it. Not out of growth, just exhaustion. The instinct to check didn't leave, though. I'd pick up my phone, thumb hovering, half awake in the morning or late at night, before remembering there was no reason anymore. He wasn't mine to monitor. And the truth is, he never had been. I kept doing other things by muscle memory. Setting out 2 mugs, buying his favorite cereal. Starting a text to him before remembering I didn't have anything to say that wouldn't come off like a hook. There was no fight to resolve. No apology big enough to reverse what happened. Just the slow realization that I'd spent so long trying to hold on to him, I didn't notice how far I'd pushed him. I slept in his t-shirt the first few nights, then I stopped. It felt dishonest, like pretending he was still wrapped around me, still reachable, still mine. He didn't text. He didn't block me either. He didn't make it final in that sharp, obvious way. That was almost worse. It left space for wondering, not hope, just noise. Harper checked in. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just asked if I wanted company. I said no. She sent me a photo of a bowl of soup anyway. Said, "Made this, you'd hate it." I stared at it longer than I should have. Not because of the soup, but because it was something that existed outside of this mess. Everything else in my life felt tied to him. The playlists, the laundry schedule, the books stacked on the nightstand. The restaurant we never finished trying new dishes from. The way I curled into myself in bed as if saving space. I kept expecting to find a release. A scream, a sob, something dramatic, but it didn't come, just quiet. The kind of quiet that made me see how much noise I'd carried around for years. How much of my relationship with Luca had been shaped by what-ifs instead of what-is. I couldn't remember the last time I looked at him and didn't wonder if he was about to leave, even when he was smiling at me, making coffee, kissing my shoulder as I washed dishes. It was like I'd lived in the exit. And now he was gone, not abruptly, not cruelly, just finally. Harper didn't say anything when I cried. She just sat beside me on the floor, legs crossed, sipping tea like we were doing something ordinary. I had my knees pulled up, arms wrapped around them, sweatshirt sleeves covering my hands. "I think I pushed him," I said. She didn't nod, didn't jump in. I kept thinking I was holding on, but I think I was just digging. Still nothing. Just presence. Finally, she asked, if he had stayed, what would have changed? I looked at her. "I don't know. You would have kept checking his phone." "I don't want to, I paused. I never believed he was really staying. Even when he did. Especially then." Harper set down her mug. "He didn't leave because he stopped loving you." "I know. He left because it's exhausting to keep proving you're not someone else." I felt that one all the way through. I thought if I kept looking, I'd catch something before it hurt. And did you? No. Then what did it cost you? I looked at my hands, the sleeves, the space beside me, everything. She nodded once, not in agreement but acknowledgement. We sat like that for a while, the kind of stillness you only get when someone's not trying to fix you. Finally, she said, "You don't have to be forgiven to let go." I blinked. What do you mean? You keep waiting for a moment where he comes back and says, "I see what you were trying to do, and I get it, and I love you anyway." I didn't respond, because she was right. But that moment might never come, she said. And that doesn't mean you're unworthy. It just means the damage is real, even if your intentions weren't. My throat tightened. I didn't want to be this way, I said. I know. I didn't think it would end. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "It didn't end because you didn't love him. It ended because you didn't know how to stop testing whether he loved you back." It wasn't cruel, it was surgical. Clean, honest, I exhaled. It came out shaky, but something inside me softened. "Do you think he's gone for good?" She didn't answer that. Instead, she asked, "Do you want to wait for him to come back so you can keep asking the same questions?" "No," I said. "And I meant it," she smiled gently. "Then don't." I leaned my head on her shoulder. We didn't say anything after that, and for the first time in weeks, the silence didn't feel like punishment. The voicemail came on a Tuesday, mid-afternoon. I was folding laundry, his t-shirts still in the bottom of the basket. Not because I'd kept them intentionally, just because I hadn't dealt with them yet. I saw the missed call first. No voicemail icon at first glance, just his name. Luca. I stared at it for a while, not because I was surprised. He hadn't blocked me, hadn't vanished. But seeing his name still jolted something, like pressing on a bruise to check if it still hurts. A minute later, the voicemail loaded. 16 seconds. I sat on the edge of the bed before playing it. His voice was calm. The same steady tone I'd grown so used to even now. "Hey, I wasn't gonna call, but I kept thinking about it, and anyway, I miss you. But I don't know how to come back without losing myself. That's all, you don't have to call back." Then it ended. No dramatic pause, no deep breath. Just a quiet exit, like the door had never fully closed behind him, and he was reminding me it still could swing open. I didn't cry, I didn't replay it right away, either. I just sat there, holding the phone like it had grown heavier. "I miss you, but I don't know how to come back without losing myself." I repeated those words in my head. Not out of longing, out of recognition. Because he was right. Even if he came back, we'd land in the same pattern. Him trying to reassure, me trying to detect. Him explaining, me decoding, over and over. A loop that felt like closeness until you stepped back and realized it was surveillance dressed up as connection. I wanted to believe I could do it differently. That this time, if he walked through the door, I'd greet him with trust instead of tension. That I'd stop measuring every word, every smile, every pause. But I wasn't ready, and he knew it. That's why he said it the way he did. No pressure, no hope dangled, just truth. Just the plain fact that missing someone doesn't always mean you should go back. I didn't call him. I didn't text. I just sat with the message. With the version of him that had finally said what I hadn't been brave enough to say first. That love isn't enough if it costs someone their peace. And the worst part? I still loved him. But I finally understood that loving someone doesn't always mean you're good for them. I found the photo by accident. I was clearing out my camera roll, trying to delete screenshots and blurry duplicates. Halfway through, I landed on a picture of us at a small restaurant from months ago. He was mid-laugh, eyes crinkled, hand resting on mine across the table. I was looking at him, not at the camera, and I could see it in my face. That soft, locked-in expression. The one that says, "This is mine." Or maybe, "I want this to be mine forever." I stared at it longer than I should have. He looked completely open, relaxed, present, and I didn't recognize myself. Not because I looked different, but because of what I now knew I was thinking in that moment. How even then, when he was laughing, when I was smiling, when the food hadn't even arrived, I was already quietly watching for signs. Already building a case in my head that things might not be as simple as they looked. I remembered that night. I remembered checking his phone in the bathroom. I remembered scrolling through his messages before coming back to the table, kissing him on the cheek, and laughing like I hadn't just been rifling through his digital life. And I remembered thinking, That's what love is, caring enough to double check. Now I look at the photo, and all I see is a man who trusted me without knowing how little I trusted myself. It's not that I thought he was cheating. I didn't. Not really. It's that I couldn't stop preparing for him to become someone else. And that's the part I'd never said out loud. Not to him, not to Harper, not even to myself until now. I hadn't been waiting for him to fail me. I was waiting for my past to catch up. I was bracing for the version of history where love starts good and ends with me being the last to know. Again, and I see now that he wasn't withholding. I was. I held back the part of me that could relax into being loved. The part that could say, yes, I believe you, without needing backup proof. I didn't give him my full trust. I gave him access and called it vulnerability. Gave him honesty, but filtered through fear. I wanted him to feel close, but only inside the walls I'd built. And when he finally left, I didn't feel shocked. I felt seen. In a way I'd spent the whole relationship avoiding. Looking at the photo, I realized I had loved him in the only way I knew how, carefully, defensively, and completely dependent on control. But he had loved me openly, without scoreboard or suspicion, just day by day. And I hadn't been able to match that, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't believe I deserved it. I wrote him a letter I never planned to send. Not in a notebook, not in a text draft, on paper. Actual pen, actual pauses. Like I needed the friction of ink and hand to slow me down enough to tell the truth. It started simply. Luca, I never wanted this to be the way things ended. I just didn't know how else to love you without always looking over my shoulder. I didn't cry while writing it. I thought I might. But it came out calm. Measured. Like I was finally speaking in the voice I should have used the whole time. I told him what I couldn't say when he was here, that I saw everything he did. That I noticed how he never snapped at me, even when I deserved it. That I knew how much effort it took to stay steady while I unraveled next to him. You gave me patience I didn't know how to receive. And when I couldn't trust it, I made it feel like a performance. Like love only counted if I could find the flaw in it. I wrote that I didn't blame him for leaving. That if it were me, I might have left sooner. You were never the problem. You were just the one standing in front of the wreckage I hadn't cleared yet. I didn't romanticize it, didn't beg, didn't spin it into something redemptive. I just said thank you for staying as long as he did, for not shaming me when he left, for telling the truth when I couldn't. You didn't owe me your peace. I see that now. I'm sorry I kept asking you to hand it over just so I could feel safe. At the end, I folded the letter, not gently, not dramatically. Just once, clean down the center. I didn't put it in an envelope. Didn't even write his name on the front. I left it on the desk for a while, then tucked it into the back of a drawer, under old receipts and manuals for appliances I no longer used. Not to forget it. But because some things are meant to be said without needing to be received. The letter wasn't closure. It was ownership. Of what I did. Of what I couldn't do. Of what love required that I hadn't learned in time to give. It's quiet now. Not the kind of quiet I used to brace against, the silence that felt like something had gone missing. This is different. Still. Even, neutral in a way I forgot life could be, I wake up without checking his location. Not because I decided to stop, but because the need doesn't live in my body anymore. I pour coffee into one mug, open one window, play music without wondering if it's something he'd like. The little habits we built together, texting during lunch, syncing calendars, arguing over grocery lists, they've all faded. Not erased, just released. Like letting go of someone's hand after holding it too long, not out of resentment, but out of understanding. I still think about him, not every hour, not with urgency, just sometimes. When I pass someone who wears his cologne, when I see his favorite author in a bookstore window. When I catch myself laughing the way I used to when he'd say something under his breath only I could hear. But it doesn't hurt now. Missing him used to be sharp, unrelenting. A constant throb of what did I do? Now it's softer, almost dull. A fact of life, like weather. Some mornings I remember how he looked at me, really looked, and I wonder if I'll ever find that again. That kind of gentleness, that kind of patience, but I don't try to chase it. I don't try to earn it back. Because I finally get it, love isn't proof. It isn't access. It isn't control disguised as closeness. It's the space between people that still feels warm, even when no one is explaining themselves. I used to think trust meant knowing everything. Now, I think it means letting someone have things you'll never know and choosing not to panic in the absence. I walk through the apartment now without scanning for signs. I leave his side of the bed empty without telling myself a story about what that means. The silence doesn't accuse me anymore. It just exists. I water my plants, take long walks, cook food I like without checking if he's had it before. I answer Harper's texts without trying to turn her into a therapist. I sleep more deeply. It's not happiness, not yet, but it's peace. And that feels like more than I ever thought I'd be able to say. I loved him. I still do, in a way that doesn't ask for anything. But more than that, I finally love myself enough to stop calling fear a form of love. And that's what makes the silence finally feel still. Not empty, just enough. Thank you for watching. Please do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I love you all.